When the storm hit the orbital station that night, Adrian never expected anyone to enter his small repair room. He had been working alone for hours, fixing a damaged energy core that refused to stabilize. The station shook every few minutes because a solar eruption nearby kept pushing unstable radiation waves toward them. It felt like the entire metal structure was crying from stress. Adrian tried to ignore the noise and continued tightening the loose plates inside the core. He was the only human engineer assigned to this alien station. Most of the crew belonged to species he barely understood, and sometimes he felt like an outsider. Still, he tried to do his work honestly. The room around him buzzed with weak lights, and he kept glancing at the flickering ceiling as if expecting it to fall on him. Then the door slammed open with a force that made every tool on his table jump. Adrian jerked around, shocked. A tall, alien woman staggered inside, her breathing heavy, her steps uneven. Her armor was cracked all over, glowing with dangerous sparks. The chest plate was half melted, and one of her gauntlets was smoking. For a second, Adrian couldn't even move. She looked like she had walked straight out of an explosion. She didn't ask permission. She stormed straight toward him. Adrian raised his hands, not sure if she was friend or enemy. Her golden eyes were sharp but filled with pain. Her dark violet skin looked burned in several places. He recognized her commander Shayla, one of the highest-ranking warriors on the station. She was known for her strength, her discipline, and her loyalty to her people. Adrian had only seen her from a distance, always surrounded by guards or officers. But here she was, alone, injured, her armor badly damaged. Before he could say anything, she reached up and ripped off her broken chest armor, throwing the burning piece aside. The edge of it skidded across the floor, sparking. She tore off the rest of the ruined plates, each one covered in cracks and radiation damage. She wasn't doing it out of anger or anything strange. She was doing it because the armor was killing her. The damaged pieces were leaking unstable energy that could burn through her skin. "Adrian," she said in a strained voice. "Obey. Now. I need your help." Her voice wasn't commanding out of arrogance. It was desperate. She could barely stand. One of her legs shook so violently, he thought she might collapse. Adrian rushed forward. "Commander, what happened?" She grabbed his wrist, her grip strong even in her injured state. The reactor in the West Wing exploded. A sabotage. Something inside the blast caught me. My armor is unstable. If it detonates, half the station will fall. Adrian's stomach twisted. She wasn't exaggerating. Her armor contained battle-grade plasma cells. If even one ruptured, they would all be vaporized. He gently helped her sit down on the metal bench near the wall. She didn't protest, but her breathing grew rough. He could see faint tremors running through her arms. The glow from her damaged equipment pulsed like a heartbeat, growing brighter each second. "I need tools," Adrian muttered. "Please stay still. If the energy core inside this armor shatters..." "Exactly why I came to you," she said. "You're the only one who understands human stabilizing methods. My people's tools can't handle this kind of damage. Too much contamination. Only you can manage it. Creeding. R1. Creeding. 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 Creeding." Adrian felt his chest tighten. A commander of her rank, trusting him this much? He never expected it. He ran to his work desk and gathered insulation clamps, cooling pads, and a radiation field suppressor. His hands shook slightly. He had repaired many dangerous things, but never armor that unstable. Never with a life at risk right in front of him. When he returned, Shayla's eyes were half closed, but she forced them open. "Tell me what to do." "You already did," Adrian said quietly. "You told me to help. So just breathe, and don't move too fast." He began with the outer layer. The armor pieces had fused to each other because of the explosion. He slipped the tools under the cracked edges, using slow, steady movements to avoid making the energy flare. Shayla winced when the metal shifted. Adrian paused. "Sorry," he whispered. "It's fine," she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. "I've endured worse." But he could see she was nearly at her limit. Her skin around the wounds had turned a deeper shade, showing the stress her body was under. Humans would have passed out from that level of internal damage. She was fighting to stay conscious. As he worked, the room felt smaller, quieter. The hum of the failing lights, the soft crackle of energy from her armor, the sound of her breathing, they mixed together, forming a strange rhythm that made Adrian focus even harder. He didn't want to make a single mistake. "You were close to the explosion?" he asked softly. "Too close," she said. "I was trying to shield the surviving officers. I thought I could contain the shockwave. I was wrong." "You saved lives," he said. "That's not wrong." Her eyes flickered toward him with surprise. Perhaps she wasn't used to simple honesty. In her world, everything was duty and strength. Adrian wasn't strong like her. But he spoke what he felt. He detached the last glowing plate, and the dangerous pulses weakened. Shayla exhaled slowly, almost in relief. But the inner core was still unstable. A jagged, crystal-like piece was embedded near her shoulder. It glowed a deep red. "That's the biggest problem," Adrian whispered. "I know," she replied. "I have to remove it manually. I trust you." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Trust wasn't something she gave lightly. She commanded armies. She led soldiers. She fought in battles where entire planets trembled. And here she was, trusting a human engineer in a small repair room. He moved closer and placed the cooling pad against her shoulder to numb the heated area. She gritted her teeth, but didn't make a sound. Adrian carefully gripped the damaged core shard with his insulated tool. "This will hurt." "Do it." He pulled slowly, making sure not to damage the surrounding structure. Shayla gasped and braced her hand against the bench. The shard resisted, then gave way sharply. Adrian almost lost his balance, but regained control, dropping the fragment into the containment box. The dangerous glow on her body started to fade. Color slowly returned to her face. "You did it," she whispered, sounding almost amazed. Adrian stepped back, breathing heavily. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes softened in a way he had never seen before. For the first time, she didn't look like a commander. She looked like someone relieved to still be alive. "Adrian," she said quietly. He shook his head. "You saved others first. I only finished the job." A small smile tugged at her lips. Warriors from her species rarely smiled. But she did now, faintly, like she wanted to acknowledge something more than gratitude. Before Adrian could speak again, the station alarm blared overhead. The walls flashed red, and a robotic voice echoed, "Attention. Reactor instability spreading. Structural collapse predicted." Shayla pushed herself up, forcing her tired body to respond. "The sabotage isn't over. Whoever attacked us is still inside the station." Adrian felt fear settle in his chest. But Shayla reached out and rested her hand lightly on his arm. Her touch wasn't rough this time. It was steady, grounding. "You will stay with me," she said. "You are now part of the mission. I cannot protect this station alone." "Me?" he asked, stunned. "Yes," she said firmly. "You obey my instructions, and I will protect you with my life." He swallowed hard, but he nodded. Something inside him felt different now. He didn't know what the next hours would bring, but he felt a strange strength forming inside him. Maybe it came from her trust. Maybe from the danger around them. Maybe both. As the alarms continued to echo through the station, Shayla stood at his side, tall and steady once more. her eyes burning with determination. The alarm kept echoing through the long metal halls of the station, and Adrian felt the vibration under his boots, as if the entire place was breathing unevenly. Shayla stood beside him, taller and stronger despite her injuries, and her eyes scanned the corridor outside his repair room as though she expected an enemy to appear at any second. She had removed the unstable armor, and now wore only the inner protection suit, but even without armor she looked like someone built to face danger. "Stay close," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "The saboteur may try again. If they were willing to destroy the reactor wing, they won't stop now." Adrian nodded, though fear crawled up his spine. He had never been in a real battle situation. He was an engineer, not a soldier. But Shayla trusted him, and that trust gave him courage he didn't know he had. He grabbed a portable toolkit, slung it over his shoulder, and followed her out into the corridor. The station lights flickered, then steadied, then flickered again. A deep, groaning sound traveled through the metal walls, followed by a hiss of pressure leaking from somewhere nearby. Adrian could feel the air growing warmer. Too warm. Something was overheating. Shayla walked fast, her steps steady even though her body still carried the weight of her injuries. Adrian tried to keep up. Every time the ground shook, he reached for the wall to steady himself. Shayla did not waver once. "How much damage did the explosion cause?" Adrian asked while they hurried down a sloping hallway. "Enough to threaten the station's core," Shayla replied. "If the main stabilizer is hit, we lose everything." Adrian's heart dropped. "We need to get to the stabilizer chamber." Shayla nodded. "Yes, and I will need your knowledge there. Our technology cannot fix human-modified systems as well as you can." Of course, humans had contributed stabilizer control software to the alien station. Adrian knew the system inside out. He had helped install the last update only a month ago. If it was damaged, he might be the only one who could restore it in time. As they moved deeper into the station, the halls became darker, the lights dimming into a dull orange glow. Emergency lamps buzzed to life, casting strange shadows. The sound of distant sparks mixed with the low hum of engines that struggled to stay steady under the station's growing stress. They turned a corner and found two guards lying unconscious on the floor, their weapons discarded beside them. Shayla instantly went on high alert. She knelt beside one, checking his pulse. "They're alive," she said, stunned by an energy blast. Adrian bent down beside her. Whoever did this knew the guard patrol route. They avoided killing them. "That means they want something specific," Shayla replied. "Not destruction alone." She stood up, her posture tense, her eyes sweeping the hall again. Adrian saw a faint glow of light reflecting off the floor. The glow was moving. He barely had time to react before Shayla grabbed his sleeve and pulled him back. A small, spherical drone rolled into view, humming softly. It scanned the hallway with a red beam. The moment it detected them, it changed color from red to bright yellow. Adrian's breath caught. "That's a charge drone," he whispered. "Yes," Shayla said. "And if it detonates, this section will collapse." Adrian stepped back, but Shayla moved forward. "No," he said quickly. "Commander, you're still injured." She lifted her hand slightly. "Stay behind me." The drone beeped faster, its light blinking rapidly. Adrian recognized the pattern. Someone had reprogrammed it for proximity detonation. If they got too close, it would explode. Shayla didn't flinch. She crouched low, watching its movements. Her eyes narrowed, with focus. "Adrian," she said softly, "I need you to tell me how these drones sense their target." Adrian swallowed. "They respond to high heat and quick movement, and they target the biggest energy signature in the room." Shayla gave a slight nod. "Good." Before Adrian could ask what she planned, Shayla grabbed a loose metal plate from the floor. She threw it down the corridor in the opposite direction. The drone immediately spun toward the sound, flashing red again. While it moved, Shayla sprinted forward in a blur of motion. She kicked the drone sharply, sending it flying around the corner. A second later, an explosion shook the hallway. Debris rained down, and a gust of hot air brushed against Adrian's face. Shayla stepped back into view, her figure steady even through the smoke. "It's clear," she said. "Move." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. She had just saved his life again. Her strength, speed, and calmness under pressure amazed him. He followed her quickly before the damaged hallway grew unstable. They reached a lift that led deeper into the core of the station. Shayla pressed her hand against the panel, and the doors opened with a tired groan. Inside, the lift shook slightly when it started moving. Adrian watched her from the side. She leaned against the wall for a moment, taking a slow breath. Her injuries were worse than she admitted, but she refused to rest. "You should sit," Adrian said quietly. "I cannot," she replied. "The station needs us." "You're hurt." She turned her head, her golden eyes tired but strong. "I have endured worse battles. This pain means nothing compared to what will happen if we fail." Adrian felt a deep respect swell in him. She wasn't just a warrior, she carried the lives of entire crews on her shoulders. Humanity had stories of brave soldiers, but seeing bravery this close, so raw and real, made him understand the HFY term more strongly. Humans admired strength in others too, and Shayla embodied that more than anyone he had ever met. The lift arrived with a soft chime. The doors opened to reveal the stabilizer chamber. The room was enormous, filled with towering pillars of glowing blue energy. Normally, the stabilizer gave off a gentle hum. Tonight, it roared like a storm trapped inside a cage. Sparks shot out from broken cables, and the air tasted sharp with ozone. But what caught Adrian's attention was the figure standing on the platform above the main control console. A masked person. Tall. Cloaked. Holding a strange device that glowed with shifting orange lights. Shayla stiffened. The saboteur. The masked figure turned slowly, as if expecting them. A distorted voice spoke through the mask. "I knew you would survive, Commander, and I knew you would bring the human." Adrian felt his heart pound. How did this stranger know him? He took a step back, but Shayla moved slightly in front of him, shielding him without hesitation. "Enough games," Shayla said, her voice sharp. "You attacked my officers. You damaged this station. You will answer for this." The saboteur tilted their head. "This station should have fallen long ago. Your alliance with humans is a mistake. And tonight, I correct it." Adrian clenched his jaw. The saboteur wasn't just attacking the station. They were driven by hatred, by some old division between species. He didn't understand the full history, but he knew one thing clearly. He wouldn't let Shayla face this alone. The saboteur raised the glowing device. Shayla immediately pulled Adrian behind a support beam. A sharp beam of energy shot past them, hitting the wall and leaving a smoking crater. The entire chamber trembled. The stabilizer pulsed rapidly, as if reacting to the attack. Adrian looked at Shayla. "We must shut down the device he's using. It's sending overload waves through the stabilizer." She nodded. "Tell me what to do." Adrian pointed toward the control console. "I need to reach that panel. If I can reroute power, I can slow the overload." "Ever." Shayla's expression hardened with determination. "Then, I will get you there." Before Adrian could protest, she stepped out from behind the beam and launched herself forward. Energy blasts cracked through the air as she dodged and deflected them with nothing but her speed and instincts. Adrian sprinted after her, his heart racing. The chamber shook violently, and he had to catch himself on the railing to avoid falling. Shayla reached the platform first and leaped toward the saboteur. They clashed, the sound of metal hitting metal echoing loud enough to shake the air itself. Adrian reached the console and slammed his hands on the controls. The screen flickered, half burned from earlier damage. He typed quickly, bypassing the fried circuits and forcing the system to respond. Behind him, Shayela fought with fierce strength. The saboteur moved fast, but Shayela was faster, fueled by purpose and sheer willpower. They exchanged strikes, each impact sending shockwaves through the metal platform. "Adrian," she shouted. "How long?" "Almost there," he yelled back. He rerouted the power, forcing the overload wave to slow. The stabilizer hum weakened slightly, but the saboteur noticed. "You're too late," the masked figure growled, pushing Shayela back. They raised the device again, aiming at Adrian. Shayela's eyes widened. She lunged forward with everything she had. Adrian heard the blast, felt the heat behind him. But Shayela got there first. She threw herself between Adrian and the blast, absorbing the full force against her shoulder. Adrian froze, his breath gone, his heart slamming against his ribs. Shayela staggered, her body trembling, her breath sharp with pain. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice shaking with strength. "Not while I stand." Adrian stared at her, stunned. She had taken the hit meant for him. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. But in that moment, he understood something clearly. He wasn't going to let her fight alone anymore. The sound of the blast still echoed in Adrian's ears, but everything inside him froze the moment Shayela staggered. Her shoulder smoked from the hit, and her breath came in sharp, painful bursts. She did not fall, even though any normal person would have collapsed instantly. Instead, she planted her feet firmly on the metal floor and stared at the masked saboteur with fierce determination. Adrian didn't know how she remained standing. He didn't know how she had moved fast enough to shield him. All he knew was that she had taken a hit meant to end him in seconds. Something inside him twisted painfully, fear, anger, and respect, mixing together until he couldn't tell one feeling from another. "Shayela!" he shouted, reaching out as she swayed on her feet. "You're hurt!" She raised a hand to stop him without taking her eyes off the saboteur. "Not now. Stay focused on the stabilizer." Her voice was strained, but steady. She was forcing herself to stay alert. The masked figure stepped forward slowly, their boots echoing on the metal platform. "How disappointing, Commander. You risk your life for a human engineer. Your people used to be stronger." Shayela straightened, ignoring the pain. "Strength is not measured by hatred," she said. "It is measured by what you protect." Adrian felt something heavy settle in his chest at her words. She wasn't just fighting for the station. She was fighting for him, too. The saboteur raised their arm again, the glowing device humming with dangerous power. Shayela tensed, preparing to move again despite her injury. Adrian could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the tremor in her arms. But she refused to show weakness. Adrian turned back to the console with shaking hands. He had slowed the overload, but it wasn't enough. The stabilizer still glowed brighter than it should. If it collapsed, the station would tear itself apart from the inside. He had minutes, maybe less. He typed faster, bypassing security locks and rewriting damaged code. Each error message felt like a punch to the chest, but he refused to stop. The lives on this station depended on him now. Shayela depended on him. Behind him, metal clashed again as Shayela lunged at the saboteur. They fought with quick, powerful strikes. Shayela's movements were slower now, her shoulder weakened by the blast, but she still fought with controlled fury. The saboteur countered her attacks with unnerving precision, as if they knew her fighting style too well. Adrian risked a glance back and saw the saboteur push Shayela dangerously close to the edge of the platform. She caught herself on the railing, dragging in a breath, then charged again. Adrian's heart pounded. If she fell, the drop below would send her straight into the unstable energy field. He forced himself to turn back to the console. He had no time to watch the fight. He couldn't help her physically, but he could finish what he started. He rerouted power again, forcing the stabilizer to go into emergency mode. The lights flickered, and sparks burst from nearby cables. But the overload warning dimmed slightly. "Just a little more," he whispered. Suddenly, the masked saboteur slammed their elbow into Shayela's injured shoulder. Shayela gasped, almost collapsing from the shock. Adrian heard her pain and spun around. "No!" he shouted. The saboteur raised their weapon again, aiming directly at Shayela's chest this time. Something in Adrian snapped. He wasn't a fighter. He had never held a weapon in his life. But his legs moved before his mind could think. He sprinted toward the platform, grabbed the nearest loose pipe lying on the floor, and slammed it into the railing as hard as he could to get the saboteur's attention. The sound echoed like thunder. The masked figure turned sharply toward him. Shayela's eyes widened. "Adrian! Stay back!" But it was too late. Adrian already had their attention, and he didn't back down. "Leave her alone," he shouted, gripping the pipe tightly, even though his hands trembled. "Fight someone who can't heal like her. Fight someone who doesn't have armor or a weapon. Fight me if you want a target so badly." The saboteur tilted their head as if confused. "You? A human engineer? You cannot even handle a shockwave." Adrian swallowed hard. "Maybe not, but I'm standing here anyway." Shayela's expression tightened with frustration and something else concern. She stepped between Adrian and the saboteur, though her stance wavered slightly. "You should not be here," she whispered to him. "It is too dangerous." "You took a hit from me," Adrian said quietly. "I'm not leaving you to fight alone." Her eyes softened for a heartbeat, something warm flickering behind them. Then, she turned back toward the enemy. The saboteur lifted the glowing device again. "Then, you both fall." They fired. Shayela grabbed Adrian by the arm and pulled him behind a thick metal pillar just in time. The blast struck the pillar, shaking it violently and sending fragments falling around them. Adrian stumbled, but Shayela steadied him, even though she was the one injured. "We need to disable that device," Adrian said breathlessly. "If he fires again, the stabilizer will overload beyond repair." "I know," she said. But the saboteur was already moving, stepping closer to the stabilizer core. The energy field surrounding the core crackled dangerously in reaction to the device. Adrian saw a meter spike on the console. The core was reaching critical instability. "If he hits the core, it's over," Adrian whispered. Shayela straightened, ignoring the pain. "Then he will not reach it." She sprinted forward again, this time catching the saboteur's arm before they could fire. They struggled, each trying to overpower the other. The device flickered dangerously close to the edge of the platform. Adrian rushed to the console again. He wasn't strong enough to fight a trained saboteur, but he could fight the overload. He stabilized the power lines one by one, locking them behind emergency barriers. The station hummed loudly as energy rerouted in a safer pattern. But then, the console beeped sharply, a warning he didn't want to hear. "Shayela!" he shouted. He activated a timed collapse sequence. "Even if the overload slows, the stabilizer will explode in minutes." Shayela slammed her elbow into the saboteur's mask. The enemy staggered, giving her a moment to grab the device from their hand. But the saboteur reacted quickly, delivering a sharp kick that knocked her backward. The device rolled across the platform, coming to a stop right at Adrian's feet. Adrian froze. The orange light on the device was now blinking rapidly. "Do not touch it," Shayela yelled. "It is unstable." But Adrian saw the numbers on the small display. A countdown. Whatever the saboteur had programmed would trigger when the timer hit 0. He didn't have time to think. He crouched and quickly studied the device. He recognized the structure. It wasn't alien technology at all. It was human-made, modified with external plating to look foreign. His breath caught. Whoever the saboteur was, they used human parts. He quickly turned the device over and saw the access panel. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside were power wires and disruptor circuits, nothing he hadn't seen before. He could defuse it. Maybe. If he cut the wrong wire, it would explode immediately. Shayla was still fighting the saboteur. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed. The stabilizer's hum grew even louder, shaking the platform beneath them. Adrian focused, blocking out everything else. He traced the wires quickly, identifying the power source. The red wire was overloaded, but the blue wire controlled the trigger. The yellow wire connected to the disruptor circuit. If he could shut off the energy flow, the countdown would stop. He grabbed the insulated tool from his belt. Then the saboteur saw what he was doing. "No!" the masked figure shouted and lunged toward Adrian. Shayla reacted instantly. She tackled the saboteur to the ground before they could reach him. They slid across the platform, metal screeching beneath them. Adrian didn't wait. He cut the blue wire. The device sparked violently, but the timer froze. The blinking light turned dark. Adrian exhaled so hard his chest hurt. It worked. But his relief lasted only seconds. The saboteur threw Shayla off and pushed themselves to their feet. They didn't try to escape this time. They charged straight toward Adrian, fury in their steps. Adrian stepped back, his breath catching. Shayla saw it happening, and something fierce ignited inside her. She pushed herself up and sprinted faster than Adrian thought possible. She intercepted the saboteur mid-charge and slammed them against the railing with enough force to knock the mask loose. The mask fell, clattering across the floor. Adrian's eyes widened. He recognized the face. He had seen that face before on the station. Shayla recognized them too. Her voice grew cold as steel. "You," she said. "You were one of us." The saboteur smiled bitterly. "Not anymore." The unmasked saboteur stood between Shayla and Adrian, their breathing sharp, their eyes burning with twisted anger. The alarms continued to echo through the stabilizer chamber, filling the air with a trembling hum that vibrated deep in Adrian's bones. Sparks fell from the ceiling, and the once stable blue glow of the core flickered unevenly because of the earlier damage. In the center of all this chaos, the three of them stood locked in a tense standoff. Shayla's chest rose and fell steadily even though each breath visibly hurt her. Adrian could see exhaustion in the way she held her stance, but he could also see something else, determination that had not been broken. She stared at the saboteur without blinking. "You betrayed your crew," Shayla said, her voice low but strong. "You sabotaged the reactor and almost destroyed this station. Why?" The saboteur wiped blood from their lip and laughed bitterly. "Because this station is a mistake. A false symbol of unity. Your people bow to humans now, pretending we are allies. But humans will take everything from us in the end." Adrian felt the accusation like a punch, but Shayla reacted faster. "You know nothing about humanity," she snapped. "You judge them from ignorance and fear." The saboteur glared at Adrian. "He is weak. He cannot even defend himself. And you risked your life for him? A human? A mechanic?" Adrian felt the familiar sting of being underestimated, but before he could speak, Shayla stepped closer, forcing the saboteur to back up slightly. "Yes," she said firmly. "I risked my life for him, because he saved mine. Because he saved every life on this station, by stopping your device. His courage outweighs your hatred." The saboteur's jaw tightened. "You think courage will save you now?" They lunged again, faster than before, fueled by desperation and fury. Shayla met the attack head-on, blocking the strike with her injured arm. Pain flashed across her face, but she did not back down. Adrian watched with fear as the two of them collided violently, trading blows that echoed across the chamber. Adrian moved closer to the stabilizer console. He checked the readings again, hoping the danger had ended, but the numbers turned red. His stomach dropped. The core was still unstable. Even though he had stopped the device, the earlier damage had already caused internal fractures in the energy coils. If the power didn't reset properly, the stabilizer would collapse anyway. They had minutes, maybe less. Adrian grabbed the nearest tool and started repairing the coil system manually. He rerouted wires, sealed cracked conduits, and forced the system to cycle through emergency restarts. His hands shook, not just from fear, but from the weight of the responsibility. There were thousands of people on this station. If he failed, all of them would die. Behind him, Shayla shouted his name. He looked up just long enough to see her struggling with the saboteur again. They were evenly matched. But the saboteur had no injury slowing them down. Shayla, however, was clearly fighting through the pain in her shoulder, and her movements had started to show strain. Adrian made a quick decision. He picked up a metal rod lying on the floor and shouted, "Shayla, move!" Without hesitation, Shayla twisted aside. Adrian threw the rod with all the strength he had. It wasn't a perfect throw, but it was enough. The rod slammed into the saboteur's hand, knocking the small backup detonator device they had been reaching for out of their grip. The saboteur turned toward Adrian in shock. That shock lasted only a second, just long enough for Shayla to strike. With one swift move, she swept the saboteur's legs from under them and pinned them to the floor. They struggled fiercely, but she pressed her knee into their chest, holding them down despite the pain it caused her. "Your mission is over," Shayla said, breathless but firm. "Surrender." The saboteur snarled. "You think capturing me will stop what is coming?" Shayla tightened her grip. "Yes, because your plan ends here." Adrian ran to her side, breathing hard. "Commander, we don't have time to interrogate him. The stabilizer still isn't fixed." Shayla nodded, keeping her eyes on the saboteur. "Go. I will restrain him." Adrian rushed back to the console and initiated a deeper system scan. The diagnostic flashed warning after warning. The energy coils were failing one by one. He needed Shayla's help, but she was still dealing with the saboteur. "Shayla," he called out urgently, "I need you to lock down the external disruptor ports. If the saboteur damaged them earlier, they might be feeding unstable energy into the core." Shayla responded instantly. She dragged the saboteur with her across the floor and activated the emergency binders built into the platform railing. The metal cuffs locked around the saboteur's wrists and ankles, restraining them securely. "You won't escape again," she said coldly. The saboteur struggled and shouted insults, but Shayla ignored them. She moved to the nearest disruptor port and began checking its status manually. Her movements were quick, precise, and practiced, despite her injuries. Adrian saw her effort and felt a surge of hope. Together, they could still save the station. He shouted instructions while she moved from port to port. Shayla followed every step, even though her body was clearly begging for rest. Adrian could see her shaking each time she braced herself against the wall. But she refused to stop. The ground shook again. The stabilizer screamed in a rising pitch, the sound painful to hear. Adrian typed faster, overriding power locks and forcing the system to route through the backup network. "All ports secured," Shayla shouted. "Good," Adrian yelled back. "Now hold the stabilizer rod when I tell you. It's going to surge." Shayla didn't hesitate. She ran to the stabilizer rod, a thick metallic pillar glowing with unstable blue light. Without fear, she gripped it with both hands, ignoring the burn it caused her palms. "Now," Adrian shouted. Shayla pulled the rod downward, with all her strength. The stabilizer shuddered and released a violent wave of energy that washed across the chamber. Adrian shielded his face as the blast of light flashed through the room. Sparks rained down. The ground trembled so hard he thought it might split open. Then, slowly, the hum began to soften. The shaking faded. The light stabilized into a steady, calm glow. Adrian dropped to his knees in relief. It worked. It actually worked. Shayla stepped back from the rod, breathing hard. Sweat ran down her brow, but her eyes were steady. She looked at Adrian, and for the first time since the explosion, a real, warm smile formed on her lips. "You did it," she said. Adrian shook his head, still catching his breath. "We did it. You held the stabilizer. You protected the station." Shayla walked toward him slowly, each step heavy with exhaustion. When she reached him, she extended her hand. Adrian took it gratefully, and she helped him stand. "You were brave," she said softly. "Braver than you believe." Adrian felt warmth spread through him. "I only did what I had to." "That is why it matters," Shayla replied. The saboteur, still restrained, glared at them with hatred. "This changes nothing. More will come. Alliances will fall." Shayla stepped closer to them. "No, they will not. Because people like him," she nodded toward Adrian, "and people like me will stop you every time." Adrian felt a strange strength in her words. He wasn't a soldier, but she made him feel like he belonged among those who fought for something important. Station security arrived moments later, alerted by the restored stabilizer signals. They took the saboteur away, ignoring his shouts of defiance. Medics approached Shayla, but she waved them off until she was sure Adrian had been checked as well. Only then, when the crisis was truly over, did she allow herself to sit down. "You should rest," Adrian said gently. Shayla tilted her head. "I will. But only if you sit with me." Shayla. 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 Adrian sat beside her on the metal platform. The chamber lights glowed softly around them, no longer threatening to explode. The danger had passed. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply breathed in the quiet that followed chaos. Then Shayla turned her gaze to him. "You stood with me," she said. "You saved countless lives tonight. You saved me. You saved me. You saved me. You saved me." Adrian smiled, a little shyly. "And you saved me first." Her eyes softened. "Then we are even." Adrian looked at her, at the warrior who had stormed into his repair room hours ago, hurt, desperate, but powerful. He had never expected to fight beside someone like her. He never expected to become part of something bigger than himself. But now he knew one thing for sure. He would follow her into any battle, and she would stand beside him through every danger. The station hummed peacefully around them, alive and safe once more, because a human engineer and an alien commander trusted each other when it mattered most. And that trust became stronger than sabotage, fear, or division. It became something unbreakable.